Once upon a time, on a quiet street where the streetlights flickered like tired eyes, a woman named Clara sat alone in her kitchen, staring at a chipped mug of coffee that had long gone cold. The house was too silent. The kind of silence that presses against your chest, reminding you of everything you've lost and everything you can't get back. Clara wasn't the kind of woman who cried easily, but tonight her hands shook as if they were carrying the weight of 10 years all at once. She had built her life carefully, like stacking fragile glass on uneven shelves. A good job, a small home, a promise to herself that she didn't need anyone to keep her whole. But then the phone rang, an unfamiliar number glowing on the screen, and it shattered the walls she had built so tightly around her. Clara, the voice on the other end said, low and strange, like someone speaking through a veil. It's time you knew the truth about your sister. Clara's heart nearly stopped. Her sister Emily had been gone for 12 years, not just gone missing. One moment Emily was a laughing teenager with messy hair and a backpack slung over her shoulder. The next she was a photograph pinned on police boards and an unsolved case file collecting dust. Clara had been 16 when Emily vanished, old enough to remember, young enough to never heal. Now the voice was back to rip open what she had tried so desperately to bury. Intermission 250 to 300 words, but let's pause here for just a moment. Imagine sitting alone at night, hearing a stranger claim they know the truth about the person you've mourned for more than a decade. Your pulse races, your breath shortens, and suddenly the walls around you feel too thin. Would you hang up the phone, or would you listen, even if it meant unraveling everything you thought was true? Stay with this thought, because Clara's choice is about to change everything. Her first instinct was to slam the phone down, pretend she hadn't answered, pretend the call never happened. But the voice continued, steady and unnerving. She wasn't taken, she left, and I can prove it. Clara's fingers gripped the edge of the counter until her knuckles blanched. She whispered, barely audible, "Who are you?" "I can't tell you that." "Not yet, but if you want answers, go to the old railway station." Midnight, alone. Then the line went dead. Clara stood frozen in the kitchen, the silence heavier now, pulsing in her ears. Every rational thought screamed, "Don't go!" She hadn't been near that abandoned railway in years, the place where kids dared each other to sneak in, where shadows seemed to move even when the night was still. But a part of her, the part that had never stopped wondering about Emily, couldn't let it go. By the time midnight crept near, Clara found herself in her car, headlights slicing through the empty road. She cursed herself for being reckless, but grief and curiosity pulled harder than fear. The railway station was, as she remembered, trusted, forgotten, the kind of place where secrets linger. Clara stepped out, every sound amplified. The crunch of gravel, the whistle of wind through broken windows. "Hello," she called, her voice echoing in the dark. No one answered. But then, from the corner of her eye, she saw movement, a shadow slipping into the building. Her heart hammered. She followed inside. The air smelled of damp wood and rust. Clara's phone flashlight trembled as she swept it across the old benches and cracked walls. And then she saw it, or on the ground, half buried in dust, lay Emily's backpack. Once upon a time, on a quiet street, where the streetlights flickered like tired eyes, a woman named Clara sat alone in her kitchen, staring at a chipped mug of coffee that had long gone cold. The house was quiet, the silence only broken by the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hall. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, sounding like secrets being shared. It was a normal day until the phone rang, shattering the quiet like a dropped glass. Big. When Clara picked up the receiver, the voice on the other end sent a shiver down her spine. "I know what happened to Emily," the voice said, raspy and low, like gravel grinding against bone. Then, just as quickly, the line went dead. Startled, Clara stared at the phone in her hand, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She dismissed it as a prank call, a cruel joke played by some bored teenagers. But then it happened again. And when she answered, the same gravelly voice spoke again, saying the same chilling words, "I know what happened to Emily," before hanging up again. The clock chimed twice, signaling 11 o'clock. Who could be calling at this hour? And why were they calling about Emily, her sister who had vanished without a trace 12 years ago? As the minutes ticked by, the memory of that day 12 years prior came flooding back to her. The day Emily disappeared, casting a long shadow over Clara's life. Emily was everything Clara wasn't: spontaneous, adventurous, a free spirit who danced to the beat of her own drum. While Clara was more grounded, practical, she admired her sister's zest for life, even as she worried about her recklessness. On that fateful day, Emily had been due to start college, a new chapter in her life, but she never showed up. The courses, the laughter, the dreams for the future, all of it evaporated into thin air. The police investigation turned up nothing. No clues, no leads, no answers. Just a gnawing silence that echoed the emptiness in Clara's heart. Years turned into a decade, hope into a fading ember. Then suddenly, this call, this whisper from the grave, promising to unearth the truth. The phone rang again, pulling Clara out of her thoughts. This time, she answered. "If you want to know what happened to Emily, come to the old railway station at midnight." The voice rasped. "I'll be waiting." Then the line went dead. Again, Clara felt a mix of dread and curiosity coil in her stomach. A part of her, the practical, rational side, screamed at her to hang up, to pretend the call never happened. But another part, the desperate, yearning part, the part that ached for answers, wanted to believe. Could this be the lead she'd been waiting for all these years? Could the mystery of her sister's disappearance finally be solved? The clock chimed again. 11:30. Midnight was fast approaching. She knew the old railway station. It was a crumbling relic of the past, abandoned and boarded up, a monument to forgotten journeys. What was this person playing at? Was this a cruel trick? A way to dredge up old wounds and leave her with more questions than before? Or could it be something more? Something real? The phone rang one last time. "Are you coming?" the voice asked, laced with an urgency that sliced through the static. "I don't have much time." Clara found herself nodding, even though the man on the other end couldn't see her. "Yes, I'm coming," she whispered, her voice hoarse with a decade's worth of unshed tears. She hung up the phone, her hand trembling. What was she doing? A million thoughts raced through her mind, but none could extinguish the burning curiosity that had taken root in her chest. Was she about to uncover the truth behind Emily's disappearance, or was she walking into a trap? As she put on her coat, she knew there was no turning back. The call had stirred something within her, a dormant determination that refused to be ignored. The clock chimed again, 11:58. The final countdown had begun. Grabbing her keys, she stepped out into the night. The air was heavy with the scent of wet leaves and distant rain. The sky was a canvas of inky black, studded with indifferent stars. The moon, shrouded in clouds, offered no guidance. The wind picked up, whipping around her like a restless spirit. Clara pulled her scarf tight, seeking a semblance of comfort in the face of the encroaching darkness. The drive to the railway station was fraught with tension. Each turn of the steering wheel brought her closer to the unknown, to whatever lay in wait for her at the derelict station. The old building loomed before her, a skeletal silhouette against the backdrop of the moonless night. Its windows, like vacant eyes, stared back at her, devoid of any warmth. The rusted sign above the entrance creaked in the wind, its paint flaking away like old scars. Taking a deep breath, Clara parked her car and stepped out into the desolate landscape. The station was a graveyard of memories, each boarded window and crumbling pillar, whispering tales of a bygone era. Where were the joyous reunions, the tearful goodbyes, the excited chatter of travelers? All that remained was an oppressive silence, broken only by the mournful cry of an owl. The tracks snaked into the darkness beyond the station, disappearing from sight like a forgotten dream. Clara hesitated, the weight of a decade's worth of fear and uncertainty pressing down on her. But something, perhaps the desperation for answers, the need to understand, propelled her forward. She began walking, her footsteps echoing on the tracks like a funeral march. She ventured deeper into the desolate structure. The air grew colder, heavier. The stench of decay, of things long dead and undisturbed, filled her nostrils. Clara's heart pounded against her ribs, each thud reverberating through the cavernous space. Her eyes struggled to pierce the gloom, searching for the source of the voice, for a sign of life, human or otherwise. Was she truly alone in this decaying monument to the past, or was she being watched? The thought sent shivers down her spine. Then, she saw it, a dark shape huddled beneath a crumbling archway. Relief flooded her, quickly followed by caution. She knew she should call out to make her presence known, but her throat was dry, her voice stuck in her chest. As she drew nearer, the shape stirred. A cough, a shifting in the shadows. And then a figure emerged into the sickly pool of moonlight, filtering through a broken window. Clara stopped dead in her tracks. The figure was hunched, shrouded in darkness. She couldn't make out any features, couldn't tell if it was man or beast. Fear threatened to overwhelm her, but she stood her ground. "Hello?" she called out, her voice barely a whisper in the vast emptiness. The figure didn't respond. It remained motionless, an ominous silhouette against the backdrop of the moonlit grime. Hesitantly, Clara took another step forward. The figure shifted, and she gasped as it raised its head. The face that stared back at her was pale, gaunt, etched with lines of pain and weariness. His eyes, though, were the most striking feature, burning with an otherworldly intensity that seemed to pierce through her very being. They were pools of liquid darkness, reflecting the torment of ages past. For a moment, time stood still. All Clara could do was stare, mesmerized and terrified. The man opened his mouth, and a voice, raspy and weak, like the last embers of a dying fire, broke the silence. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped, his words catching in his throat. "This place holds pain, sorrow, and things best left forgotten." Startled by his words, Clara took a step back. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "How did you know my sister, Emily?" The man looked away, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I knew your sister," he whispered, his voice thick with regret. "We were close. But this place, it steals memories, twists the truth, and those who stay here too long become lost to it forever." He turned back to Clara, his eyes pleading. "You must leave now. Don't let this place consume you too." But Clara was rooted to the spot. The mention of Emily, the sister she'd yearned for so long, had frozen her with hope. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. The only sound was the relentless ticking of the old grandfather clock, somewhere in the bowels of the abandoned station. Time seemed to stretch on forever. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe. And then, as abruptly as it began, it stopped. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of Clara's own ragged breathing. When she finally found her voice, it was a mere whisper. "Emily," she breathed. "What happened to Emily?" The man looked away, his face etched with sorrow. "Your sister," he began, his voice heavy with the weight of the past. "She came here willingly. She sought refuge in this place, this sanctuary of forgotten dreams." Clara shook her head in disbelief. "But why? Why would she abandon me? Abandon our family?" The man hesitated, then spoke in a low, somber tone. "Your sister, she loved this place. The station, the tracks, they were her solace, her escape from the world's harsh realities. She found comfort in the rhythm of the rails, the endless journey that mirrored her own search for peace." "But," Clara pressed, her voice cracking with emotion, "what happened to her? How did she die?" The man looked back at her, his eyes filled with an ancient sadness. "She didn't die," he whispered, his words hanging in the air like a funeral knell. "She disappeared, vanished into the ether, leaving behind only echoes of the laughter that once filled these halls." Overcome with grief and a decade's worth of pent-up questions, Clara collapsed onto a nearby bench, the weight of her sister's absence crushing her. The man watched her, his face a mask of compassion. He wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but knew that nothing he could say would ease the pain that had become Clara's constant companion. As the first rays of dawn began to creep through the grimy windows, casting long shadows across the platform, he rose to leave. "Go home," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Find peace, find closure." He disappeared into the gloom. Clara found something in the dust and grime of the old station, something that brought a surge of realization to her eyes. It was a backpack, old and worn, but familiar. Emily's backpack. In that moment, Clara understood that her sister hadn't just vanished. She'd chosen to disappear. to disappear into the forgotten corners of their past. As Clara made her way back to her car, the rising sun casting a pale light on the desolate platform, she knew she wasn't just carrying her sister's backpack, she was carrying the burden of her story. The truth might have been elusive, but the journey, the relentless pursuit of answers, had brought her closer to her sister than she'd ever been. The old railway station stood silent, its secrets buried deep within its decaying walls. The whispers of the wind carried tales of love, loss, and longing, a requiem for dreams left unrealized and hearts left broken. As Clara drove away, the station receded into the distance, taking with it the ghosts of the past. But in the quiet of her car, surrounded by the remnants of her sister's journey, Clara knew that some bonds, some mysteries, transcended even death. Emily might have chosen to disappear, but her spirit, her essence, remained woven into the fabric of her sister's life. And in the tapestry of their shared history, their love, their longing, their unbreakable bond shone through. A beacon in the darkness. Please click the part 2. Please like, share and subscribe button. Thanks for watching.